welcome to another episode of Turn Left. I am your host, Indiana's own Dana Black, coming to you live. Yes, all the way live from Black Pearl Studios, where we talk about Indiana politics from the left side of things. Welcome back to another episode of Turn Left. I'm Indiana's own. Y'all, I am so excited about all of the shows. And as you can see, I've been working on my lighting. I have been struggling trying to get that shiny spot at the center of my head. I'm getting better at it, y'all. Every day is a new day. So, yay, this is what I really look like when I don't have like a flashlight shining directly on my forehead. But anyway, Indiana's own Dana Black. I'm not a journalist. I am not someone who goes out here and knows everything technical. But I feel like my job is to bring you the people that are on your ballot. I feel like it's my responsibility to use my time and talent to bring you information about your elected officials and the people that are on your ballot. And so that's why I do Turn Left. Each week it'll get better. I promise you, no more shiny forehead. It was bugging me if it wasn't bugging y'all. It was truly bugging me. I had to take time out and figure that out. But today, I love it when I can get my elected officials on. So today on Turn Left, we have Wendy Dant Chesser, who is running for re-election in House District 71. Wendy, welcome to the show.
Dana, it's been too long, so I'm really happy to be here.
I know. I love it when I have return guests because they know what it's all about. They know how to just have fun with me. How have you been?
Been great. Life is busy as always. We've got changes in the family, changes in the workplace, lots of things happening at the State House. Some of it you feel like you're just taking it as it comes and trying the best that you can. Other times you feel like you've really tamed the tiger and you can take your ideas and you are the one in charge. So I believe the good Lord humbles us occasionally and reminds us we're not in charge, but it's nice that every once in a while we get the feeling that we are making a difference.
I love it. So for the people that don't know, tell the people who you are and where you come from.
Great. Wendy Dant Chesser. I have been in office since June of 2024. I am representing House District 71, and that is in the far southern part of the state. And that is mostly the cities of Jeffersonville, the town of Clarksville, and a small sliver of the city of New Albany. And we're all part of that metropolitan statistical area of Louisville, Kentucky. So a lot of our news and our issues and a lot of our priorities stem from our region. And sometimes we feel a little disconnected from what happens in the rest of the state. And as I've taken the role at the State House, it's nice to bring the voice of Southern Indiana into those conversations when policies are being made.
That's interesting you say that because whenever I talk to people up in the northern part of Indiana, especially those that are in the region, they're in that Chicago area and they say the same thing. And it's like, we understand it's about marketing. It's about what media market you're in. You guys are in the Louisville media market, but you still represent Indiana and some of the votes that you guys vote on. Talk about how important it is to stay connected. Not just that, you're down there in Louisville or in that Louisville market because you live in Indiana, but making sure that the people in that area are getting the news from Indianapolis.
It's difficult. We don't get any television news out of Indiana. We don't even get public television. So some of the news shows or the political shows that are played in a lot of parts of Indiana, those aren't in our market. So it gives us a little more of a responsibility to make sure that if we're taking votes and we're pushing policies or we're advocating for a specific position, we have to sort of set the stage on what it's like in that conversation in Indianapolis before we can jump into the actual how do we move the needle a little bit.
I love it. Wow. And so you are finishing up your first full term, correct?
Yes, I am.
What was that experience like?
2 years of serving, 2 full years now of serving in the General Assembly. It's amazing how much easier it is to do something the second time. Mm-hmm. I believe the first time everything was new. Mm-hmm. But I try to really capitalize on 3 things that I learned during my first session.
Okay.
The first is that to a person, everyone at the State House was nice to me.
Okay.
They treated me with respect. And I don't know that I expected that because my campaign was in 2024 was rough and it was expensive and really full of a lot of tension. It was great that when I went to the State House, I was treated with respect. The second piece that I learned, and this was more of this hurt a little bit more, is because my learning curve was tougher than I thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
I'd run the Chamber of Commerce down here. I had worked in advocacy. I had testified in front of and pushed bills at the State House from the outside. The speed at which things work at the State House, it really did catch me off guard. So my learning curve was a little bit steeper. The third real lesson that I learned, and this is somewhat what we're talking about, the geographical differences around Indiana are really hard to come to grips with when you're making policy. And I'll give an example of I'm on the Roads and Transportation Committee. And you think, okay, road funding and road conditions, that's pretty universal and it would be pretty consistent, but it's not. In our area of the state, we've seen a lot of growth. So we have a lot of new infrastructure that's been put in place. In the central part of the state in Indianapolis, with all due respect to my friends there, the roads are terrible. It's like driving on the moon. You feel like you're bumping all the way across from one part of town to the other. And then you get up to the northern part and you think of the toll road and how many local communities are concerned or are dealing with traffic trying to avoid that toll road. And so their local road concerns are much more prevalent to them. And then you've got a rural legislator who's coming in from a different part of the state, and they're just like, just give us a road. We don't care what it's like. We have no roads. And so I think that's a good example of taking an issue that seems like it would be a universal solution and putting all of those voices and perspectives into the conversation. And then saying, now what do we do that's good or best for all of us? So yeah. It's a big learning curve.
Now that I know that you're on the Roads and Transportation Committee, you might not have wanted to tell me that. Okay, look, I feel you on the road conditions in Indianapolis. Are we ever going to truly address the funding formula that is one of the main reasons why Indianapolis, Marion County roads are in the shape that they're in, because we're being funded the same way other places are?
In 2025, there was a road funding bill. I believe it was 1461. It's funny how some of the numbers stick with me. That did provide some relief to the city of Indianapolis. Okay. Now, it wasn't as good for my community. And specifically in my community, we have we have the bridges across the Ohio River to Kentucky, mm-hmm. and there are tolls on them. And the concern that I had with that bill is that it opened up all roads for more tolls, and it didn't protect those of that 50-mile radius that had previously been in place. So I voted no on the final version of that bill. And although I knew it was good for Indianapolis, or at least the feeling was that it would be positive for Indy, it wasn't good for my constituents. So I had to balance that. And I did vote for an earlier version of the bill, but it didn't come out the way that I needed it to tell the folks in District 71, this is going to be good for you. So I voted
and that's
on the
fair. That's really fair. But I think I don't know now I have to go look up the bill. What was it? Was it addressing the formula though? Like, was it? Because I don't want any more toll roads either. I feel like, I'm gonna be real with you, because I feel like I've already paid for these roads once. Why do I have to keep paying for them with tolls?
There are great argument. And the counter to that is, it's a user fee. So only the people who use the roads pay for it. Now, I think there's a lot of different ways to look at that. But we talked about a lot of different funding ideas. A lot of them were shut down at the end. We had about 10 or 12 different options, and they were all discussed in the committee. But the reality, Dana, is that in Indiana, prior to this gas tax being relieved because of the Iran war, we were looking at $1 billion deficit almost in order just to keep the roads we have in the right condition. And that says nothing about investment in new roads or bridges. So there is a concern. We're trying to make sure that it's a fair concern, but all of those different voices in different parts of the state are going to see it differently.
Yeah.
And constituents are going to see it differently.
Heck
I've
yeah.
got folks in my community who say, I never go to Kentucky. Go ahead, toll that bridge. They're fine with that. I have others who live on one side of the river and work on the other side, and it is a daily issue for them, and they have to think about that.
And even though I don't go to, I've just used 31 now. I don't even go on 65. I get off of 65, get on 31, and then find the highway on the other side. I'm just not, because I feel like I've already paid for 65 once. I'm not paying for it again. Now that's me. But my concern, I guess, and maybe you could take it back, because I know you guys do your summer studies and things like that. The way that formula is written, it's isn't it based on 2-lane roads?
I'm not sure if I can pinpoint. It's a gas tax. And here's what happened in no surprise to anybody. In 2020, two things happened. Number one, you had people stop driving or drove less.
Yeah.
And then we introduced work from home and all of those things that hopefully people are not using their vehicle. Well, I don't know, but hopefully
I work from home, so I love it.
Yeah. Many people aren't using their vehicles as often. The second piece is that you have increased efficiencies in vehicles.
Yeah.
They go further on the same tank of gas.
Yeah.
So we're not buying as much fuel. And then the third component is really the cost of all of the components to building a road and a bridge, labor, concrete, planning, land acquisition, all of those things are only increasing in price.
Yeah.
And so it's a math problem. Nobody wants to pay more than their fair share, but really we do have a math problem. And with what's going on in Iran and the fuel prices going up and down, I saw a sign for another over $4 a gallon gas station here in Southern Indiana. And I'm thinking, okay, that's with the 61 cents that we're getting off that will expire in first week of August.
Yeah.
So we're going to be looking at a problem of additional higher fees for gas that could push us over $5 a gallon if they don't start coming down. So we've got some hard decisions to make.
Because I saw today that by the time this is released, it'll be much later. But I saw today that the oil reached $100 a barrel. So that means everything is going up. So even though you guys are trying, I just hope that, because right now I hear people talking about, how bad Indianapolis roads are, because they are bad. They are bad. I know our city county council tried to pass some ordinances last couple of weeks on raising our excise tax to cover the money that we need to get the grant that we need. But the mayor voted it down, and it's like, people complain about the roads, but you got to pay for them somehow. Somehow we got to pay for these things.
If you don't pay for the roads, you're paying for the result, the
tires, the rims, the shocks, the brakes, everything else.
Yes.
So I'm glad. So what we just mentioned the roads and transportation committee that you're on. What other committees do you sit on?
I have 4, so that is one. The second would be it's a lot. Financial institutions, so regulating all the things that go along with banking or cryptocurrency or other pieces of that. That is pretty complex and detailed. Then I'm also on the insurance committee, which it is detailed. It is very much a learning curve for me. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed learning. Insurance is very, very complicated. I was the type of person who said, when we had open enrollment, I was like, no, I'm not ready for that. But now we're trying to understand how the policies are affecting things. And then you deal with what's going on at the federal level and how do we incorporate that here. And that's a good one. And then the fourth one would be the small business, commerce, and economic development. And that's my background. So That one actually feels most comfortable for me, but the variety of what comes in through that committee can be astounding. We could talk about an herbal supplement that could be sold,
Mm-hmm.
and then a cemetery related proposal, all in the same committee meeting. So you really are hit with a lot of things. And if you're a small business or if you represent a small business, all of these pieces that come along are going to have ripple effects. So how do you understand what they're going through and help advocate for the needs of the small businesses in your district? And that's what we come to the table to try to do.
I love that. So pretty much all of your committees. I interviewed Bo Bai a little while back, and he broke
Mhm.
down the role of the Secretary of State. Like, I see y'all being partners. Like when because the Secretary of State's office manages all those policies that you guys put in place. So so that's why we got to get you back in office and then get him in office so that we can start seeing some common sense policies. Did y'all see how we drew that line?
I like that.
You
I
see how
like
we
that.
did that?
Yes.
Because I didn't realize you were sitting on all those committees, and
Mhm.
every time you said something, it triggered something that Bo talked about in his role as Secretary of State. So
Well, I'm sorry I haven't watched his
no, it's okay.
interview yet. I think I will go back and find that.
Yeah, because I was like, oh, he does, because they talked about securities. So I think securities might be different than the finance committee. I'm not sure, but all of those things relate. So I imagine he'll be having those conversations with you when he wins. Back to
I
you
look
and
forward
you
to it.
winning. What
Yes.
is your
Yes.
favorite? What is your favorite committee? The one that you just can't wait to get to.
I like them all.
I love it.
I mean, I really do. Every one of them has some, having run the Chamber of Commerce in Southern Indiana for 11 years, I've worked with banks, I've worked with insurance providers, I've worked with engineering firms that do roads and bridges and contractors that fix roads. And then I've a whole host of small businesses that run the gamut from
Mm-hmm.
everything from the funeral home to the diner, to the caterer. I mean, just all to the small financial provider. It's it's exciting to find out what's going on. I will tell one other quick story if you don't mind.
Sure.
And this one also happened in the Roads Committee, but my very first committee in 2025 was the Roads and Transportation Committee. And I looked at the agenda, I did my homework, and I'm like, okay, we're going to discuss naming roads and bridges in honor of fallen officers.
Okay.
And so I came into that meeting expecting it to be a somber conversation, and it was. What I didn't expect was the father of the state trooper who was shot in the line of duty.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't expecting him to talk, or I wasn't really expecting the sheriff's deputy's widow and their two kids to come up. And as I'm drying my eyes, it was pointed out to me that while what we do at the State House is not always important to everybody, everything we do is important to somebody.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it was a great lesson. It hurt, but it was a great lesson to learn. And I hope that it's made me a better legislator and listener, because I know somebody out there finds what we're talking about incredibly important to them.
Absolutely. And with us having a super minority in both chambers, you guys are spread so thin
Mm.
out all over the different committees. How do you balance the time? Because I'm a nerd. I sit back and watch the committee meetings as background noise during the session, and I notice that sometimes you guys, like, the meetings are literally overlapping each other. How do you manage your time?
Well, first of all, the staff at the State House are fabulous, whether
Love
it's
that.
our legislative assistants, our communications people, our policy director. They do whatever they can do to make our jobs easier, and we appreciate that more than I can talk about. We also have trust and respect amongst our colleagues. And sometimes that does extend to the other side of the aisle. If we know we have a problem that has to be resolved, for the most part, people will roll up their shirt sleeves and try to figure out what the best resolution is going to be. Now, You throw the D or the R behind the name, or you put the rural or urban or north or northern part of the state, southern part of the state. We have a lot of different things. This year, I think it was in good measure that although I had a really hard time, and I asked Representative Harris, how are the Chicago Bears moving to Hammond going to be good to people who live in Jeffersonville 5 hours away? We talked it through. And the framework that was put in place was something that I could come back and tell the people in Jeffersonville, this is not going to hurt you. And in fact, it's going to be good for you. And here's how. So we can really put some of those differences aside.
Okay, I get that. I think one of the hard things, like, because one of the things that's true, there's hundreds of bills that are, introduced, but maybe a small percentage of those bills are super duper controversial, right? We have the culture wars and things like that. And I honestly struggle when, and maybe you could help me, Madam Rep. I struggle with trying to establish a relationship with somebody who believes my existence should be compromised, or that I shouldn't, whether pick a demographic, like I shouldn't have body autonomy, or I shouldn't be able to marry my partner, or I shouldn't, or my history should be erased. How do you manage to work through that? Because even though some of those things don't impact you, you are a woman and all of that other stuff. How do you manage to say, I'm going to look past the fact that you tried to vote, you voted away my rights, and I'm going to try to work with you? How do you do that?
Things move very, very quickly. And I think in my first session, if I knew there was going to be a controversial bill, which there were, I would agonize over it. And then after all of the debates, after all of the amendments, after all of the positions that people take, you have to push a button, a green button if you vote yes, and a red button if you vote no. Not a maybe button or a halfway button. It's either green or red. And as soon as the speaker announces what the vote total is and says this bill passed 68 to 24, or whatever the numbers may be, sometimes they're that lopsided, you have to put your head down, because he immediately calls up the next bill. Mm-hmm. The next bill may be important to somebody in my district, or someone that I feel is a vulnerable population. Mm-hmm. And so that next one has to be important. So I get it. We talk about being thick-skinned. We talk about how we move from a very controversial topic to something that, runs through a unanimous vote. It's hard. And I've controlled my emotions a little better than in the second session than maybe I did the first session. Okay. But I still feel we were able to, some things that you just can't get through to people. Yeah. But the next bill it's like walking into that brick wall. Yeah. One of these days I'm going to bust through it. Yeah. That's how I don't know if this is going to be it or not.
That's how I feel doing the work in Indiana. I feel like I'm running into a red brick wall, and mm-hmm. I have to go every year. I go down to Victory Institute International Conference so that I can get fed, with a bunch of queer and gay politicos mm-hmm. who will rejuvenate me so I can come back for the fight for the next year. Yeah. But one of the things that was super controversial this past session was the redistricting. That was a fight that we actually won. And I say we, but it was because, there were Republican senators who now have pretty much lost their job, voted against it. What were those conversations, if you can share, anything that obviously you can't share. No. What were those conversations like amongst your colleagues from the caucus, but then also across the aisle?
Well, I'll start with what it was like at home. It was a resounding, don't vote yes for this. We don't want this. And we've tallied all of the emails and phone calls. And the only ones that really would call and say, yes, I want you to vote yes for this, they didn't give names or addresses. So we don't even know if they were in Indiana. So that causes the antennae to go up a little bit. You come back in, it did pass in the House. Yeah. So we have to recognize that over half of the sitting representatives hit that green button. And listening to the defenses was very automated. It was, this is a political decision. This is a political maneuver. No, we didn't take that population into account. No, we didn't consider that. Yes, somebody from the East Coast drew up these maps. And there was no shame in the way that we had gotten to that point. And it's really hard to combat that when it was like very open. We're doing this for politics over process or over policy,
over people.
And we're doing this because somebody else told us that it's what they wanted us to do. It's just really hard to argue against that because logic doesn't work.
Yeah. So I've talked about some of the negatives. Let's talk about some of the positives.
Okay.
Tell me about a bill that you were either a co-sponsor or sponsor that you were proud of, whether it passed or not.
So in 2025, my first session, I put forth an insurance bill that was brought to me by a constituent here in Southern Indiana, and he said, "I have." He was also licensed as an insurance broker in Kentucky. And he said, I can save senior citizens dollars in Kentucky that I can't save our Hoosier friends the same because the law doesn't exist this way. Mm-hmm. And so it was called the birthday rule, or a Medigap insurance coverage. If a senior citizen has Medicare and they buy a supplement program, they could not change providers without going through medical underwriting. And what that meant is that that provider that they were with could change the rates. So we did our homework. We did it. We checked with all of the insurance providers that offered this type of service through in Indiana, or this type of coverage. And we said 70-year-old female non-smoker. We just threw something out and we just said, let's say she's on plan G or plan F. I don't remember which one we used. The cost per month for the same person varied from $110 a month to over $400 a month. Now, the federal government regulates what that plan has to look like. So these were apples to apples comparison, but the cost changed that much. So seniors didn't have the flexibility to change providers without going through medical underwriting. So you may be on high blood pressure medication, or you may have had something that came up and you could be completely healed from it. You were still locked in. So that Medicare cover, or that Medigap or birthday rule, allows a senior. We moderated it a bit in the second session. But it allows a senior to shop around to providers as long as they do it within 30 days of their birthday. And that's why it's called the birthday rule. And as long as they do it, as long as they're shopping for the same plan letter that they had. So if they were on G, then they had to go for G again.
Okay.
And it was remarkable that we were able to push that and just make the case. This is holding us back. There are 9 other states that are doing this. In my constituent who's brought this to me was saving, on average, seniors were saving about $800 a year.
Wow.
And that makes the difference between getting that prescription, getting the food, or getting the health care that they need if they were saving that much a year. So we felt really good about it. It passed unanimously in the House. It went to the Senate. It couple votes against it in the Senate, but it was not altered in any way. It went straight to the governor's desk and was signed. So it took effect January 1st of this year. So if any seniors are watching, or anybody who has a senior loved one in your family, if they are on a Medicare supplement plan, they should be able to go to their provider, to their insurance broker, and ask to shop those costs.
So when a bill like that passes, where it is a super technical bill that doesn't get a lot of attention, right? How do you guys get the word out that this is something that's available?
Well, it's a great question because as the author of the bill, and I had some fabulous co-authors and co-sponsor and sponsors in the Senate, we've marketed the best that we can, but it's, people are saying, well, the state should tell everybody about this. No, it's not the state's job to market. That's where the brokers, that's where
Oh,
your insurance agents come in.
okay.
And if they know about it, they should see that as a competitive advantage. And most of them, not all of them were on board when we were proposing it, but once it came on, it passed and received the governor's signature, we were able to say this is great, and if you start to sell it this way, you may get more customers. So,
Interesting.
yeah,
Okay. So,
it played
so you
well.
guys spoke to did you guys like regroup and speak to the brokers and let them know? Like, I'm still like, cause this is not like a controversial bill, right? Cause Republicans get old too, if they're lucky,
That is true.
right?
That is
If they're
true.
lucky, they get old. And so I'm always curious once, if it's not a super controversial bill that's going to get a lot of clicks and it's a good thing, or even a bad thing, because sometimes bad things slip under the radar too. I've always wondered how we get the message out because not everybody's a junkie like me, right?
Well, we have to think of what the role of state government is. It's
Right,
not our jobs to sell
right.
insurance program or policies. So we have to work with the folks that we can. Now, I doubt there are too many seniors in my district who haven't received the mailings about it,
Got
haven't
it.
heard me speak at the senior center. I mean, for me, it's something that I think we should be promoting to my seniors here, but I can't guarantee that all of the legislators see it the same way,
I
or
love
they
it.
may have other priorities.
Well, I know about it now, and I'm close to being a senior, so uh, I will know that. I don't know. Yeah, I'll know that. So that's actually a good bill. Now, when you mentioned several times that people in your district know what's going on, sound like you go back and talk to your people on a regular basis. What are they talking to you about?
Boy, I've had two town halls just this month in
Wow.
July. Sometimes I do it a couple of different ways. Sometimes I set the topic and we
Hmm.
talk about something that I need input about, or I'm just curious because I haven't heard anything about it.
Hmm.
Other times it's open. And so on July 7th, I did a town hall with nurses. And I thought, I'll just throw this out here, see, because we get lobbied by different groups. And I knew some of the folks from the Nurses Association, and I only knew a couple of nurses that lived in the district. We had about 15 or 16 people show up, and we spent a lot of time talking about what workplace situations are like for the nurses, whether they
Interesting.
work at a hospital, whether they're running or they're working at a doctor's office, or maybe running at like a med spa type clinic. They had their issues and their concerns, and I learned a ton about what what policies do, and how they affect the nurse perspective.
Hmm.
July, I think it was the 11th, I had an open town hall, and we talked about some very localized issues there. And one of them is something I'm trying to figure out how we can soften some legislation that was put into place in 2024 before I arrived. We have a puppy store in our mall,
Mm.
and there was a parvo. A puppy was sold, was tested positive for parvo, and it happened the week before the town hall. So everybody that really was fired up about that. And I have a 2 hour conversation. We probably spent 45 minutes talking about what local controls exist or don't exist, is what the case is, for allowing a certain type of business to locate in
Hmm.
the city. So we've got some ideas. I don't think there'll be a complete reversal of that law. I don't think I'll not even propose that because it'll be DOA. Instead, I'll look at how we can find some compromise and put that into the bill that will perhaps affect the people in Clarksville, Indiana, but also have some application in other parts of the state if they're finding they have the same issues.
Yeah. So I have to ask, what is parvo? I don't even know what
Oh,
that.
I'm sorry. The parvovirus. It is it can be fatal for dogs. It's also transmitted by humans. We don't catch it, but if this puppy had been around other puppies at the store, or people had gone in and played with the puppy and they went home and played with their dog, then it could have been a really bad public health situation.
Got it. Wow, that's a lot. Are they? I gotta ask, because all the candidates that I'm talking to, they say they're talking about affordability.
That throw out a topic, and we'll talk about the affordability. Childcare, still a huge issue in my community, as well as I know others around the state. It's it's not a situation where childcare providers are just milking the system. It is absolutely a very tough business model. Costs are going up, assistance has come down, and now we're trying to figure out how we can keep our workers working with adequate, reliable childcare, affordable, reliable childcare. So that's one of the big issues.
Yeah, and I have to go back, because when they cut the funding, the voucher funding for childcare. I want to be very clear which vouchers I'm talking about. When they cut the funding for childcare vouchers, so many daycare centers closed. I had one of my sisters had a daycare center, and she had to close it because she could no longer afford the operating expenses. And then once the daycare center started closing, our governor comes back and goes, hey, look what I'm gonna do. No, bro, you created this problem. So I just had to put that out there.
It's a challenge. I think we were all devastated, and all of our communities were somehow affected by that lack of those vouchers for working families. So we've got a long way to go to try to fix that. Housing costs is another area that comes up. The average age of a first-time home buyer in this country is just under 40 years old. Yeah. It's like 39 years and 8 months or something. I had a bill, and I wasn't optimistic it would move because it had a budget impact in 2025, but it would create a first-time home buyers program, a savings program, similar to a 529 savings account that you may save for your child to get ready for college. It would allow a similar type of savings account at any local bank or Indiana chartered bank that would allow a person to save as long as they hadn't owned a home in the previous 3 years. Or my favorite idea of this was, how many people get married and they get a china set that they use maybe once a year. Mine probably hasn't been used but twice in decades. But if somebody had said, if I had given my account and said, hey, instead of buying me something, why don't you make a deduction make a contribution to my home savings account? And oh, by the way, you'll get a 20% tax deduction for your contribution from your state tax liability.
That would have been great.
I think that would help a lot of these first-time home buyers. And I think I bought my first home at 25 or 26. That's my equity. That's how, home ownership is the way that families create wealth through equity. The children of homeowners tend to have a more stable environment, not always, but they don't move as often. And then the communities in which a higher percentage of people own the homes that they live in are more interested in protecting that investment. So they're engaged in their community, and they're active, and they're aware of what's going on. So there's only good things that can come from more people and younger families buying homes as they start their lives and raise their families.
Yeah, I like that idea. I have several 529 plans because I forget birthdays. Wendy, I am terrible with birthdays, so I just get a baby's money every month. That way I ain't got to remember to go buy gifts. Like Auntie Dana give you money every month. I don't even know what you're talking about. What you talking about your birthday? It's Christmas. What you mean? Yeah, I'm terrible. I love that idea. And I also think that there was a bill that came out this last session that was trying to reduce the requirements for new homes. If I recall correctly, I didn't like this bill because I felt like there was some safety concerns. Like if we start removing some of the regulations, I mean, we've seen that happen before where you remove a regulation and then something terrible happens and people die. And then we go, oh, we shouldn't have done that. Go ahead.
It was House Bill 1001, so it was a priority bill this past session. And I heard from all of my local municipalities what their fear was is it took local control away. One of in the final version of the bill was much more watered down.
Okay.
The House approved it. There were a lot of concerns with it. The Senate watered it down quite a bit, and the House concurred. So we have a bill that is attempting to make it easier for developers and home builders to build more homes. And with the idea that if they're building homes, it gives more flexibility. So seniors or empty nesters may move into a smaller home and free up a bigger home for the next family, or a family could move into something, or even a single person who comes in and says, I want to start establishing my equity as well, has those possibilities. So the local governments that I heard from on that bill really did need to see some changes, and it was changed to retain some of the control on zoning and parking requirements and ancillary or dwellings, like we call them a mother-in-law's dwelling, sort of a she shed or a he shed or something in the back. How do we make sure that the local governments, one of the big concerns we had is if you put too many of these structures in backyards and you don't require parking, then the fire truck going down the street can't get into a neighborhood and we're all at risk. So we had that type of conversation, and it was addressed. I'm still curious to see some reporting, and I think there is supposed to be some reporting that was put into the bill. What's the benefit, or who's benefiting? What's the true impact of this bill? It's going to take a while to get some of those numbers generated. But the other challenge is we know that Congress just did something at the federal level. So you've got this, the state makes a change and the feds make a change, and there's a little bit of this back and forth, and that's true with housing, that's true with insurance, that's true with healthcare costs across the board. And the analogy I use is that sometimes people feel like they're in the middle of a waterbed. If you remember the waterbed, the way that those big water
never wanted one.
Somebody jump on this side and somebody jump on this side, and whoever's in the middle is just having their brain shaken.
I know. I never understood those, but okay.
Well, if you did, it wasn't enjoyable. And I think that's what a lot of folks feel when the feds get involved and the state gets involved, and we keep going back and forth. We're looking for some consistency and allowing time to make sure some of these policies that we think are the right ones, some of them have to be proven, and that can't be done until they've been implemented and have been studied. So slowing the roll just a little bit on some of these really intense programs would probably be in a lot of people's best interest.
I love it. It is quite clear that you know what the heck is going on in that state house. But so now I gotta shift gears a little bit. So I get the pleasure, like the joy, one of the joys of my life is that I get to talk to a lot of first time candidates, right? And, when you run for office for the first time, you have this idea, like I was a better candidate and I was always worried about if I won, like how would I legislate, right? I was always nervous. Share with us maybe 3 main traits that an incoming freshman House rep or state senator would need to have in order to be successful.
Number 1, find a mentor. Find somebody who's going to, whether it's your seatmate or somebody that is going to explain what happens, because the process and the procedures that take place, they can, until you've done it a second time, you're trying to figure out what exactly does that rule mean? What did we just approve, or what did they ask us to approve? So that's number 1, find a mentor. Number 2, go home and have town hall meetings, because your constituents have to know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
The summer in between my first session and my second session, if I didn't have a relationship with some key folks at the schools or the communities, I got their numbers. I had them on speed dial so I could call and say, this housing bill, how do you feel about it? And you get the real answer. Or it looks like this is going to be good for you. How does that work? So having those connections with the people at home who have to live and die by the decisions we make, that was really important as well.
Okay.
And then third, come in with an open mind, because I believe there are expectations that you're just not going to like certain people, but there's always something you can connect with them on, and that's an opportunity for growth. If you can defend your opinions. I have an 18-year-old daughter, and I've always told her, I said, you can have whatever opinion you want. You just have to be able to explain it. Okay. And so sometimes getting to that point where a differing opinion that can be explained, and if your explanation is listened to, it just builds an alliance. And none of us are smart enough to do this by ourselves. It's going to take all of us. And so we have to figure out how a new person would come in and help understand that that's part of the system.
I love it. That is great advice. And I hope everybody that's running for office is listening. All right, give me your elevator pitch.
Okay. I have spent over 25 years working in community and economic development. I have now taken that opportunity to the State House, taken that position to the State House, but I come home every weekend and I listen to what my constituents say, because they're the ones that have to be happy with what we're doing.
All right. All right. Wendy Dant Chesser, running for re-election.
Yes, ma'am.
In House District 71. Thank you so very much for joining me. I get it. Like I said, I get excited when I have elected officials on, because you guys give us insight that we are just not going to get, even when I am a junkie and watch the sessions. Thank you so much. Listen, I wish you the absolute best of luck. Do you have an opponent? I can't even remember.
I do. I do have an opponent. Yes, I do.
Well, then, yeah. Okay. Yeah, y'all. Time, talent, or treasure for District 71. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Dana.
Now, listen, guys, she's polite. I'm not finna be polite. Click her donate link. We need to send somebody back that has experience, that understands what's happening. So click her donate link, become a recurring donor, or if you got $1,000, just go and give it to her. I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't give that money to her, because look, it takes money. It takes money to reach your voters. When she has a town hall, that costs, well, she can't pay for that with that. But when she's out talking to constituents, when she's on the campaign trail, that costs money. She got to pay for water for her volunteers. Y'all hear me say this all of the time. The reason why we ask you for those dollars is because it costs money to reach voters. Just like that bill that would save senior citizens on their insurance. It's going to cost money for somebody to market that. And apparently that's not the state's job to do, but that's something that's going to help people. That's something that she can go out and tell people about, because she was the one that authored that bill. But in order for her to do that, she got to put gas in her car. She got to be able to drive to these places. These are the reasons why we need you to donate. So please, please, please click her donate button. Find whatever you have. If you only have $5, we'll take it. We'll take it. It'll go straight to her campaign. It's not going to Indiana's own. It's going straight to her campaign, because this is her Act Blue link. So donate, 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 donate. Oh, and she's probably going to need some volunteers too. So go to her website and sign up to be a volunteer. What? You didn't Yes. Time, talent, or treasure. That's how we win elections. Right? I'm going to say it one more again so that y'all understand. Politics is not a spectator sport. You got to get off the bench and come on and get involved. All right, Indiana's own Dana Black, turn left. Thank you so much for watching. I will holler at you next time. Peace. Turn Left is the property of Black Pearl IT Solutions, executive producer, Indiana's own Dana Black. Music by Dorian and 22 from Pixabay.